Hi, you're watching a very special session of Agenda AWANI right here in Davos at the World Economic Forum 2018. And my strategy is I let the big boys go and get the Fortune 500 CEOs and the top leaders, because 99% of the email I send them, they won't reply with a yes anyway. But that's okay, because there's hidden gems, especially to our society. Many of us only look at World Economic Forum and see billionaires and top political leaders. I see more than that, because I see a gem like who's sitting in front of me here, who are more like us. You know, Ghana's population is closer to 30 million and we're just above 30 million. And they have palm oil, we have palm oil. They speak English, we speak English. And this is my new friend, Foster Awentiti Akugri.
Yes.
I hope I did justice to pronouncing it.
Very well.
Global Shaper is a movement that runs all year long. Selected top leaders, young ones mostly, that makes a difference to make the world better. And Foster even leads the Global Shaper Hub for his area. But because I've been to Ghana before, so I'm going to ask you this question. Many people, when they mention the word Africa, a lot of perception comes to mind. But when I was in Ghana, I saw the tremendous power and drive of its young people. And about 2 decades ago, I worked with the young people of Ghana for creative content, for television production, and for storytelling. But looking forward now, what is the story of Ghana that you want to tell? Because it's not enough to talk about Ghana as an exporter of commodity. It's not enough to talk about Ghana is a country full of promise and natural resources. It's time to talk about Ghana as a digital, inclusion-based entity surviving the disruptions of the fourth industrial revolution. I have to ask you this kind of question because you are the global shaper chosen by the World Economic Forum. Over to you.
Okay, so basically, growing up, I grew up in a very average family, not so exposed to the world of exuberance and extraordinary extravagance and all that. We tried to thrive on the little we had, and my parents sacrificed a lot to get all of us through school, giving us quality education and making sure we got everything they didn't get.
Okay.
So first of all, I'd like to thank my parents for sacrificing a lot. It's because at a point I got to a point where opportunity met me preparing myself, and that was when things started to change and I started to see things differently. I started to realize that you have to be very intentional about the choices you make at your early stages in life, because whatever you do today is a seed you are sowing for the future. Now, there's a narrative that Africa is lagging behind in so many things, and Ghana as well is lagging behind. Now, how do we as private individuals catalyze that change instead of focusing on government to make those initiatives?
Okay.
Now, priorities are the major things governments focus on, and they always focus more on macroeconomic factors, things that will help them get more rankings and more credit to be able to get access to loans and the likes from the international market. But the question is, what is happening at the grassroots?
Correct.
Do these things actually affect the lives of the people?
Do they even get it?
Exactly. So how do we as private individuals stop talking about the problems we are seeing, stop criticizing, and start acting on solving those problems with the little we can? So one principle I live by is you need very little to make impact. The little time you commit to somebody and the little amount you commit to helping somebody actually becomes very transformative in their life. So I try as much as possible to create an equal opportunity for people who do not have that access and people who already have the access. So if we say the world is unbalanced and very unfair, now what if there was a level platform that allowed people from rich homes and people from poor homes to compete for the same thing, providing them the enabling environment and equal opportunity to succeed? Do they have an excuse to fail? They won't. So that is what I've been trying to do.
So you take something that has been seen for quite some time to be negative, which is hacking. Hacking started with the perception of people around the world as a bad thing. There's some geek somewhere, maybe young, supercomputer, never go out, dark room, and they will break other people's property digitally. But nowadays, hacking is being used more as a tool of putting people together in a partnership to use technology to find solutions for things that are around us. Climate change, poverty, right here. And you here, I think, also because this is the first time the World Economic Forum has 7 female co-chairs. I'm not saying you're female.
Yeah, I actually had a... I was wondering why it was that way.
Then there's another new thing. For the first time, there's an official hacking activity, a hackathon, organized on the sideline of World Economic Forum. Davos is Davos Cluster. There's another about 5 to 10 minutes drive. At Cluster for 48 hours, young people and everything else put together, and they're supposed to solve the problem of the 6 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, something like that. So, isn't that what you're doing in Ghana? Putting people together, using technology, hack problems, and especially young people, they are very passionate. They might not have more wisdom like the old people, but they're very passionate, and with a bit of technology, there are wonderful things that they can do. I have to go for the first break, but once you're back, I want you to tell that story of how you take technology and the thing called hacking to not only bring people together, especially the young, but to really come up with solutions that is really needed in your country and beyond. Right after this short break. You are still watching a very special session of Agenda AWANI, recorded right here at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And I'm here with a Global Shaper. Global Shaper is one of the 3 main initiatives that works all day, all week, all month, all year for the World Economic Forum around the world. And Global Shapers pick the best talent in the country. And I'm sitting across from the best talent of Ghana, representing Ghana here at the World Economic Forum. Ghana is hot like Malaysia, but you're cold here. So we are cold here. But we're talking about a hot issue, which is we can't wait for government, we can't wait for the world to change. We want what we can do be done now. When I went to Ghana about roughly 20 years ago, there were red dirt roads in the capital city. And children were playing in the, I think it's like municipal football field. There was no grass on it, but still Ghana produced top players because my hotel was Novotel. So there's a field beside that, right? So from there to now, more infrastructure. I've seen the videos on the web, but what's the point of catching up with the last industrial revolution? You want to catch up with the new industrial revolution. You are doing it almost single-handedly by bringing the power of ICT, computer and internet to hack issues. Tell us a story.
Okay, so the story of Hacklab started way back in college when I was when I entered college in first year. There used to be a community called M Friday, and there was a Vodafone tech hub on campus where we used to go and have sessions every Friday.
This is the Kwame Nkrumah University.
Yeah. So we used to go there every Friday to have discussions around technology and the likes. And the people who founded that initiative left the school. So there was nothing exciting apart from going to class. But when I was entering the university, I had a single advice from somebody: don't just go to the university to learn. I used to be an academia, but I decided to expose myself to the other things and try to do new things I had not done before. So I challenged myself to the task. So in second year, second semester, I started to think about how best I could create opportunity for people to develop solutions that will address local problems and still build their capacity to become entrepreneurs. Because in computer science, it's all about mathematics and reading and making sure you score. What about the practical aspect? And that is where we were lagging behind. Now, there's a narrative in Ghana, everybody talks about our educational system is out of date and that the government should do something about it. But is it a priority now for government to do an educational reform? How does private sector come in to influence that? So I took that task upon myself to bring together about 12 tertiary institutions every year in KNUST to organize this hackathon for 3 days. So on the first day is a forum session where we bring people, business people, people in academia, people in government to have discussions around trending global issues. So in 2016, the discussion was centered around promoting e-commerce in Ghana.
Okay.
And during that time, e-commerce was at its peak and there were so many innovations coming up, new technologies. People were embracing it in Africa as a new way to promote trade, both locally and across countries in Africa. So we drove this discussion, global discussion, at the grassroots level to get people to develop these solutions. Out of that, about 5 startups have emerged from that hackathon in 2016, and they are currently in full operation. Now, in 2017, there was a typical discussion around financial inclusion, where it was a global thing, and the UN has set a goal, the World Bank has set a goal to make sure by 2017 they are able to include as many people as possible financially.
Yeah.
So how do the principle behind the whole hackathon is take global issues and bring it to the grassroots level and get the young ones to engage in those conversations by getting them to practically develop solutions to address those things. Because at the global level, it's all about the talks.
Yes.
Now, how do we get the grassroots to do the action?
Participation.
Exactly. So what we are driving is inclusion and participation. Now, there are so many things that come out of that, and that is first of all prepare them for future jobs.
Right.
The fourth industrial revolution is approaching.
Yes.
And expert knowledge is what is going to be required for people to stay in their jobs.
Yes.
Now, how do we build the capacity of these young ones to fill those gaps? In Ghana, unemployment is at its high peak, and it's also a global canker. How do we build people to fill those skills gaps? Skill gap is also another thing. Lack of job opportunities is another thing. Now we are building the capacity of people to close skills gap and also building entrepreneurs out of it.
Right.
So at the hackathons, they don't just develop tech-enabled solutions, they also develop business models around their tech-enabled solutions in 36 hours.
Okay. 36 hours only, yeah?
In 36 hours, you are tasked to develop a solution that is viable, that can be commercialized and is scalable. So and then we use the competitive approach to get people to develop things. Now we put a prize money on it and other opportunities, mentorship, internship and the likes, and get them to compete for that prize. That way we excite them to develop and push them to do more in 36 hours. And trust me, so many things come out of it. This year we are talking about the 4th industrial revolution. Are you ready? And the students participating are going to be developing solutions to address how to make the city smart, how to make Ghana's city smart. So instead of getting government to start this conversation, get the young guys to start developing things which government will be interested in.
How has the government responded so far?
Okay, so this current administration has done great work making policies flexible for entrepreneurs in Ghana. They just recently did a tax reform on giving the youth in entrepreneurship tax relief for 5 years with a very flexible structure. And I think that is actually a positive step.
Let's go for the last break, but once we are back, I want your opinion about the world, I want your opinion about Africa, I want your opinion about many things. Not just about what you do in Ghana, because once you're connected to a platform like World Economic Forum, you are a network around the world with powerful things and powerful people. Let's talk about that after a short break. You are still watching a very special sit down with a very, very promising youngster from Ghana, Africa. My God, 20 over years I've been to Ghana, but it's such a beautiful country, just like Malaysia. Nice people, just like Malaysia. But we both, and both of our country, have to face the disruption of the fourth industrial revolution. You have set out, you yourself have initiated using hacking, but our views matters in the world. Inclusiveness needs to happen. So, what are your views from Ghana to the world?
Well, I think using Ghana as a case study in the world at large, Ghana is like a sandbox which I'm trying to experiment something that needs to go global. Now, whatever I'm doing in Ghana is easily replicated can easily be replicated across the world, and people are already doing it in other places. It's like a mighty ocean with little drops falling in, and the little drops is what makes the ocean bigger. Mm-hmm. So our little contributions from whatever we do is what contributes to where the world is going to lead. There are issues about climate change, there are issues about peace building in Africa, there are issues about corruption, there's issues about global power shifts and the likes. Mm-hmm. But it all boils down to the fundamental things. What I'm most passionate about is the very, very grassroots people, the decisions made at the global level and its implications on the grassroots level. Now, they drive several things and try to assume, using abstract knowledge, to assume that it is going to have a positive implication on the people. But there are several other indicators and several other factors that affect those people at the grassroots. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to reduce poverty, and you donate money to a government to reduce poverty, you're actually not addressing the problem. There are several organizations, non-profit organizations, that go to the ground to try and solve these problems. How do you consolidate all these people, decentralize whatever funds and resources is coming in, and get them to do the job at the grassroots level? And I think the micro indicators are what contribute to the macro indicators, and that is the easiest way we can solve the problem of poverty, unemployment, improve the standard of living of people, promote peace. Because when people have a comfortable living environment, they think less about conflicts, and peace is easily established.
Okay. You know, many people see Africa as only some place to invest. They want to look at the natural resources. They want to look at many things. But how do you see it? Because Africans are very proud people, strong. I've met many of Africans in Ghana, in Sudan, and sometimes I see there's a disconnect between how the rest of the world views Africa and how Africa would like to be seen and to be known.
So we are driving a new Africa, which we call the New Scramble Africa 4.0. An initiative supported by the World Economic Forum to make Africa better again and Africa great. Now, I want to use China as a classical example. Okay. Years ago, China was once a great country, and China collapsed drastically. What China did to become what it is today is by solving its most fundamental problems, by building on its strengths, which was agriculture, and building the capacity of its indigents. Today, the world is shifting all its manufacturing to China because of what? Capacity and open markets, yes, to allow free trade and the likes. Mm-hmm. Now, coming to Africa, there are certain primary things we need to do to be able to drive Africa from where it is to where we want it to go. And global pressures, I think it's not necessarily a negative effect on Africa. There's a narrative we are driving about Africa without aid, or yes, that whole narrative, and Africa rising and the likes. Now, we want to consolidate ourselves and become one continent that is driving trade, mm-hmm, and other things. In Africa, by statistics from the World Economic Forum say, by 2050, Africa's population is going to be twice the population of the world. And
there's a lot of young people.
And one in every four people in the world are going to be Africans. Mm-hmm. 3 in every 4 people in the world are going to be Africans. Now, it means that we are going to be controlling the consumer markets. Now, how do we consolidate all these things and try to build opportunities locally to consume, manufacture, and trade across ourselves instead of, and then also export to the global market, instead of us absorbing everything
So the
coming from the
government
global market.
and the private sector and the public must work together.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the growth is slow and you wouldn't take the advantage.
Exactly.
Before I let you go, I always ask this question here, right here in Davos, because this year, I think the social factor is strong in any discussion. You can't talk about industry without how it impacts the people. Talk about giving back. You could have remained in academia, go to Europe or America, but you are there, right there where you were born and trying to make a difference. Giving back. How important is that for you?
I think so. This brings me to the issue of people migrating out of the continent to find greener pastures other places. But there are actually so many opportunities locally. I'm passionate about staying in my country and making it better again, building the Ghanaian dream and building the African dream, where people will not want to leave the continent and go to other continents for greener pastures, but others will want to leave their continent and visit Africa because Africa is great and rich in minerals and rich in opportunities. So I think it is up to us individuals to take up that responsibility to try and drive that change. And that is why I am doing that. I'm starting the change and driving people along with me.
And you don't want the hardship that your family had to go through.
Exactly.
to be. How do you give back to what your parents has given you?
So it's very fundamental to ensure I continue to respect them for whatever they've done for me and acknowledge them for what they've done for me.
Okay. I think you're doing great. Your parents would be so proud of you. Thank you so much for watching this special edition of Agenda AWANI right here at the World Economic Forum. And this has been the Global Shaper. You can continue to watch our discussion. Don't forget, this is about giving back also. Thanks to the strategic partner of Viceroy AWANI, PTPTN. We'll see you in another episode very, very soon. Goodbye. Thank you so much.